When did you know you wanted to be a journalist?
I wanted something that would be interesting.
Standing on the North Korean border, the president with the South Korean president, President Moon, about to meet with the North Korean leader.
I'm not bragging, it's just a fact. I've had so many weird experiences that I'm having trouble remembering.
Just bullets coming at you, from every angle.
So we're trying to trick some young people into going into journalism.
I'm almost never bored doing what I do.
You do get to witness history.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Those are historic moments that I got to be there for.
It's always the most interesting job.
As I sometimes say, it beats working for a living.
I'm not bragging, it's just a fact. I've had so many weird experiences that I'm having trouble remembering.
You can do everything from interviewing President Trump to going to Africa with Al Sharpton and everything in between, right? Like, what haven't you done?
Everything in between. Yeah, and by the way, on the basis of no skills. That's kind of the cool thing. No, I don't really have many skills. I mean, I'm a decent writer. I'm a close listener because I'm interested when people talk. If I do manage to shut up occasionally, and when I do that and people talk, I listen carefully. So I would say very carefully. So I'd say those are my skills. But on the basis of those limited skills with which I was born, I have been able to go all over the world, many times, and meet people I found really fascinating.
So here in Brazil, Hungary, El Salvador.
Carlson made his name in the 1990s as a print journalist, working for the Weekly Standard and getting published in basically every magazine imaginable. In 2000, he made his way to television with a job at CNN.
Crossfire! Ladies and gentlemen, the main event, bow-tie brawler, Tucker Carlson.
He later went to MSNBC, then he founded the Daily Caller before ending up at Fox.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Sites.
Today he runs his own media company, the Tucker Carlson Network.
Starting soon, we'll be bringing a new version of the show we've been doing for the last 6.5 years to Twitter.
Over his career, he's interviewed world leaders, pop stars, billionaires, traveled to every state and dozens of countries.
I mean, I wound up in detention in Vietnam once. I have had dinner with every bizarre person on the planet in every bizarre country on the planet. I met Kim Jong-un in the DMV.
North Korean security right behind me. Most humorless people I think I've ever seen.
I mean, I don't know. I could go on and on and on. I'm so interesting. I'm actually not that interesting, but I've been privy to a lot of interesting events and really grown from it.
This is too much fun, you know what I mean?
It's the most interesting gig you can have.
You were actually with a pen and a notepad before you were in front of the camera.
Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your start?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I grew up with it. My dad was a reporter, and I just thought it sounded like the most interesting life.
Tucker, you're gonna have to eat some shoe leather, brother.
Paul, it wouldn't be the first time I've had to eat my words.
Oh my God!
I wanted something that would be interesting.
This conflict here between Israel and Lebanon is playing out around the world, of course.
I wanted my job to, at the end of my life, allow me to tell interesting stories to my grandchildren.
Every journalist we spoke to echoed Carlson's attitude.
If you like to be creative and you like to learn, there's nothing better than journalism. I'm Emily Jashinsky. I'm the DC correspondent at Unheard and the co-host of the podcast Counterpoints. That's what I do here in Washington, DC.
We met up with Jashinsky while she was on assignment at the National Mall.
It's always the most interesting job, and you see that on TV every single day. All of those fictional portrayals of journalism.
Just follow the money.
There's something really real about it.
And what does winning look like to you?
Reclaiming the fourth estate. Reclaiming journalism as an honorable profession.
And there's something really romantic and exciting about it. So don't leave yourself with any regrets. Take the plunge.
Like so many young journalists, Jashinsky has moved between print and on-camera work through stints at The Federalist, The Washington Examiner, and The Hill's morning show Rising. As Unheard's DC correspondent, she now mixes print with a daily online news show.
Welcome to Undercurrents, our daily news show from Unheard's Washington Bureau.
But if you could go back 10 years into time, would you do it all over again?
Of course. I mean, you can't experience what I've experienced just in the last 10 years, going to Mexico. I spent the earlier part of this week reporting down in northern Mexico. I was at January 6th reporting on that. I am on the Capitol grounds as Trump supporters are getting inside the Capitol. I was at the riots in 2020. It's been incredibly exciting and rewarding. You can't beat a job that lets you hop around the world and capture some of these amazing moments, to watch history, have the front row seat to history in real time.
But that front row seat sometimes becomes front and center when you, the journalist, become the story. That's what happened to columnist and Fox News contributor Deroy Murdock during the 2024 election.
And I am truly honored to be invited here tonight.
I wrote a piece called The Libertarian Case for Donald J. Trump. It went through about 20 or so of his policy achievements.
Deroy Murdock, who I've become friends with.
And he quoted for about 7 or 8 minutes, just read my piece, read about half my op-ed piece.
Deroy wrote, the Libertarian Party should nominate Trump for President of the United States. Whoa.
And a funny thing that happened there is, as the event started, he looked around, I guess he thought I was there.
A great libertarian who may very well be in the room right now, I believe. Deroy, where are you? He's great.
And I wasn't there, I was in my apartment, 200 miles north in New York City.
I like Deroy, I've liked him for a long time, and he is a libertarian. Thank you, Deroy, thank you.
And so it's very exciting to be at the heart of the action as a journalist.
You do get to witness history.
Absolutely, absolutely. Oh, all the time.
As I sometimes say, it beats working for a living.
Kyle Peterson is a member of the Wall Street Journal editorial board. He was one of the first graduates of the College Fix's mentorship program, which you too could be a part of.
Why do you keep showing up for work every day?
The fun thing about journalism is that it's always interesting. If it's not interesting, you're doing it wrong.
In college, Peterson wasn't sure what he wanted to do until he connected with the College Fix's parent nonprofit, the Student Free Press Association.
But it was the Student Free Press Association that landed me at an internship in Washington, D.C., where I got my first chance to do the kind of political and policy writing and reporting that I was already reading in my free time.
What should a young person today do if you're reading the Wall Street Journal and think, gosh, I'd love to write for it one day?
Well, one thing would be to keep reading that kind of coverage. And then another thing would be to write some of those kinds of things.
One thing that struck us while talking to journalists was how interesting it can be, even in the early stages of your career.
I'm Margaret Olohan. I am a senior reporter with the Daily Wire. Back in 2020, during COVID, I was reporting from my parents' living room. I somehow got a hold of Biden's accuser, Tara Reade, and she was accusing Biden of sexually assaulting her in the 90s.
His former Senate aide, Tara Reade, accused him of sexual assault.
As a young reporter, I reached out to Tara Reade and said, can I talk to you? And no one else was doing that, and so she did. And so from my parents' living room, I was leading a national narrative on this woman. Around that same time, I reached out to Kayleigh McEnany and asked her if I could interview her. And the next thing I knew, I was in the White House interviewing Kayleigh McEnany in front of her fireplace.
Here with me today is White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany.
I went to the NCAAs in 2022. I was up in the bleachers watching a guy race Riley Gaines. And I was the reporter that got Riley Gaines to speak out and to tell her story in the first place.
I mean, they're called puberty blockers. They just block your puberty.
How'd you break into reporting?
I thought I was going to be an English professor.
Do you swear?
So I watched the entire Kavanaugh hearings, and I was radicalized by the way that the mainstream media was covering this story.
How did it strike you?
Well, it struck me as true.
I would far rather be writing the news and be an active part of the news than just watching it and kind of seeing how things go.
Mary Margaret Olohan joined us to talk about...
Since then, Olohan has hit all the daily news outlets, the Daily Caller, the Daily Signal, and now the Daily Wire.
When you look back on what you've done over the last few years, are there any moments that stand out for you as having been particularly fun or interesting?
Yeah, I really love doing some man on the street interviews.
Who would you say is more dangerous, the Taliban or Texas Republicans?
I would say both.
GOP is a hell of a lot more dangerous than the Taliban.
I've also done a lot of on-the-ground reporting at protests and rallies, whether it's reporting on the overturn of Roe v. Wade, going to all these pro-abortion protests in front of the court.
What does our country look like if Roe v. Wade is overturned?
I'm gonna start crying.
Women will die.
Being the only reporter on the ground that was willing to talk to the U.S. Marshals and ask them why they're not arresting these protesters when they're in violation of federal law.
The court cut his time short. A rapist should not rule the court.
Those are historic moments that I got to be there for.
Hello again, John Miller here. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe. Also visit our website at The College Fix. If you're a student and you'd like to join The College Fix and try out journalism, find the button on our homepage and an editor will contact you. We got more videos coming, please stay tuned.